The moment she walked into the diner, soaked from the rain and trembling like someone who had been running for miles, every conversation in the room dimmed to a hush. Her eyes were red, swollen, and full of a panic so raw it made people glance away, unsure whether to care or pretend not to notice. But one person couldn't look away. He couldn't. Mark was sitting in the corner booth with his 5-year-old son, trying to convince the boy to eat half a grilled cheese, when the woman collapsed into the opposite booth like her bones had finally given up. Something inside him told him that whatever storm she'd walked through hadn't ended just because she found a seat indoors. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet good people can do for each other, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps more stories like this reach someone who might need them today. Mark watched her with a protective instinct he didn't entirely understand. He had learned to stay in his own lane these last few years, raising little Noah on his own after his wife passed, but the sight of the woman shaking as she held a napkin to her face pressed against a place in his heart he thought had gone numb. She looked lost, like someone standing on the ruins of everything she once trusted. She had no food in front of her. She didn't call the waitress. She just cried. And Mark knew too much about silent suffering to pretend it wasn't there. After a few minutes of wrestling with the fear of overstepping, he took the sandwich half Noah didn't want and approached her booth. He didn't say a word, didn't ask her what was wrong, didn't pry with questions she wasn't ready to answer. He simply placed the plate in front of her and sat down across from her, offering nothing but quiet presence. She looked at him like she didn't deserve even this small kindness, shaking her head in protest, but he nudged the plate gently, and something inside her broke open. Hunger, exhaustion, fear. Whatever it was, she took the sandwich and began to eat through her tears. Her name, she later told him, was Jenna. But she didn't offer anything more, and he didn't push. Mark knew trauma had its own language, and sometimes silence spoke loudest. What he didn't know was that Jenna wasn't just a stranger fleeing an everyday heartbreak. She was running from a life that had collapsed in a single night, a life she could no longer safely return to. The rain hammered harder against the windows, and the dull buzz of the diner lights flickered above them as if the world outside were mirroring her turmoil. She had arrived in this small Oklahoma town with nothing but a backpack containing a cracked phone, a pair of shoes that didn't match, and a wallet with no ID. She'd been driving for hours before her car died on the side of the road, leaving her to walk the last 2 miles to the first lights she found. The diner. Mark noticed small things while she ate. How she flinched every time the door opened. How she kept glancing toward the windows as though expecting someone to appear. How her fingers trembled so violently she had to grip the sandwich with 2 hands. Once, she covered the bruises on her wrist without thinking, but Mark saw them anyway. He didn't ask. He simply sat with her. Noah eventually toddled over from the other booth and climbed beside his father, eyeing the woman with innocent curiosity. Jenna wiped her eyes and smiled weakly at the child, though her smile wavered like she wasn't used to being seen with kindness instead of fear. Noah offered her a napkin and Jenna laughed, a soft, broken sound that made Mark's chest tighten. When the storm outside finally eased, the diner emptied, leaving only the 3 of them and the soft hum of the coffee machine. Jenna's breathing had steadied, but she still looked fragile, like a person made of glass edges. Mark paid his bill, helped Noah into his jacket, and hesitated before turning to Jenna again. He didn't want to leave her alone. Not like this. Something about her loneliness hit a nerve he'd tried for years to bury. Jenna whispered that she had nowhere to go. The words came out hollow, as if even admitting them cost her strength she didn't have. Mark wasn't reckless with trust, not after everything he'd been through, but he also knew what it meant to stand at the edge of your life and wonder whether anyone would notice if you slipped. He offered her a place to stay, not forever, not even overnight, just long enough to find warmth, safety, and a plan. She looked at him with disbelief, suspicion, and overwhelming gratitude tangled together. Still, she nodded. The drive to Mark's small home was quiet, except for Noah's sleepy breathing in the back seat. Jenna stared out the window as if memorizing the route, perhaps making sure he wasn't taking her somewhere dangerous. Trauma made even kind gestures feel suspicious. Mark understood. When they reached his home, he offered her the couch, brought out blankets, and set a cup of tea beside her with a gentle smile. She held the cup in both hands, inhaling the warmth like it was the first safe thing she'd touched in months. That night, she didn't sleep much, but she didn't cry the way she had in the diner. Something about Mark's house, the drawings on the fridge, the toys scattered on the floor, the faint scent of laundry detergent, made her feel human again. Over the next few days, Jenna slowly began to talk. Not everything, just pieces, fragments, the edges of a truth too painful to say all at once. She said she'd left behind a man who had promised her love but delivered fear. She said she'd been hiding for months, trying to find the courage to leave for good. She said she had been afraid to ask anyone for help, terrified no one would believe her, terrified he would find her if she tried. Mark listened with the patience of a man who knew what real grief sounded like. He didn't judge her for staying as long as she had, nor did he ask why she ran so abruptly. He simply reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. As the days passed, Jenna slowly regained pieces of herself. She helped Noah draw pictures, helped Mark wash dishes, and even laughed occasionally. She started to look less like a ghost and more like someone trying to step into the light. She found work at a small bookstore in town. Mark's friend owned it and didn't ask many questions. She walked there every morning with a scarf wrapped around her neck and a cautious hope rising inside her. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, Jenna still woke up shaking, convinced she heard footsteps outside. Mark always checked the locks twice, reassured her, and sat with her until she felt safe again. He never tried to replace the people she'd lost or erase the pain she carried. But he became the anchor she reached for when her knees threatened to buckle. Noah adored her, and she adored him. She became part of their life without anyone saying it out loud. Months later, when Jenna finally gathered the courage to report what happened, Mark stood beside her. She was no longer the terrified woman crying alone in a diner. She was someone rebuilding her life with a small, hesitant strength she'd discovered in herself. And when the case ended and her past no longer threatened her future, Jenna realized that Mark had not just fed her that day. He had fed her hope, breath, and the belief that her life didn't end the night she ran. It began the moment someone chose to care. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep stories of compassion and resilience alive. Before we close, comment below. Do you believe a single act of kindness can change someone's entire life?